when you look back, you've been an entrepreneur for a minute. You've done all of it. You've done consulting, coaching, you make offers. Now you run a software company, right? Like you went and made a SaaS platform, which I still think you're a madman for, and I'm glad you do it because I won't. But when you look back at that, when you think about your entire journey as an entrepreneur and all that experience, like what is one of the biggest mistakes/lessons that you learned? And then how do you implement that and maintain the teachings from that kind of in everyday life right now?
Number one, biggest problem, mistake, without a doubt, without any comparison, without anything close at all, is comparing yourself to other people. And for a madman like myself, you can take a comparison. They say comparison is the thief of happiness, right? I tend to take comparison to have a normalized standard by which I can try to beat. I can try to beat somebody else, competitively in the marketplace on doing something better or cheaper or faster or more scalable and whatnot. But otherwise, like almost all happiness is stolen when you start to compare yourself. So, I mean, we're in the internet marketing space. We're in the entrepreneurial space. The easiest thing you can do is to fall for the trap of the social media lie. And every other guy who's out there, one of my buddies is making $4 million a month, doing his thing. And like, I'm kudos to him, but I also know behind the scenes, that doesn't mean he's making $4 million. It means that he's spending $1 million on ads and $2 million a month on teams and infrastructure and tech and software and all those things. And maybe at the end of the day, he ends up with 5 or 10%, going, which is great. Like great for him. That's amazing. But it's like, you see the outside perspective, and what you really need to understand is the inner work that's required to get to a certain spot and whether or not that's worth it to you. So for me, I started a SaaS platform in one of the most competitive red oceans on the planet. And only because I knew that there was an inkling in me, and we're going to dive into this too, that there's enough of ethical malfeasance and enough technical issues that exist in the current space that I know for a fact that I can solve, and we have solved, and we're going to continue to solve, that when people become aware of where they're at right now and how good things could be, they would radically change their perspective. Right. So in the way of saying that, like, okay, don't compare yourselves to a version of someone else who's put in 10 years and you've only done it for a year and don't expect yourself to be there yet. In that same token, the comparison of like saying, what's the best case scenario for me, right? How do I get to where I need to be in the right sequence, in the right timing, and put in the leading indicators that end up giving you results? What do you put into place to make that happen? And so that's kind of what the story of Drop Funnels is all about, is like, we had this hypothesis that we could treat people better and do it cheaper, faster, more scalable, and really help people to be the hero of their story. And that's what we've been chasing since day one. So hope that answered the question.
Yeah, no, it did. And you used a word. What was the M word that you used? There was enough
ethical malfeasance. There's enough like just twistedness. It was like there's business and then there's ethics. And it seems like there's enough ethical boundaries being broken. There's enough malfeasance in that side that it's like, someone needs to do something about that. Someone needs to like either call it out or change it or do something different where that doesn't continue. It's almost like, I'm going to make the most gross comparison, but it's almost like human trafficking in the sense that like, it's such an underground, still underbelly, like everyone kind of knows it happens, but they don't really put a lot of effort into exposing it or whatever. I'd say that there's an almost, not quite that big, because there's not quite that much of human capital being destroyed through the industry, but a very maybe parallel version to a business version of human trafficking, which is the sales of people's information, privacy theft. There's enough darkness on that side that I was like, man, as a person who cares about people's hearts and souls and my own heart and soul and my family's heart and soul, that we have to try to do something different.
Yeah. And that's, we out here now, BandAids coming off. So for those of you, I'm going to preface this for a minute. Jordan and I are really good friends, and we have some deep conversations, and And in the amazing word that he just used, by the way, like I need to read more because I thought of like Disney's Maleficent. Like that was the brain that I was
It's
like,
same thing.
oh,
It's like in Spanish, it's like mal means bad. It's like maleficent would be like a bad. It's just like the worst version of bad. Is
got it. Okay, so
malfeasance,
I was
right?
pretty close. So I'm somewhat educated, right? So my YouTube education's paying off, right? I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
mine too.
And so like, you know what's funny is even the parallels between us, right? So you sell, software and you do an amazing job. By the way, everybody listening, I talk about drop funnels on the podcast all the time. I am not paid to talk about drop funnels. I am friends with Jordan. I believe in it. I use it. He's not paying for this episode. Let me just be really crystal clear. Like I
Correct.
believe in it and I use it. But here's what's interesting is that I feel like there's even a parallel for me, and it happens in our world. Like I've seen this with a lot of our mastermind students, a lot of our audience and myself included, where having a heart and being aligned to your soul and actually adding value creates a reactance in the market because it's so out of the norm. And people are so used to being transacted upon or sold simplicity and delivered complexity without realizing what's at the sacrificial bottom of it, like what they're actually losing for that. And I've been in this industry for a long time. Like I got into this game in 2009, 2010 is when I like became accidentally an entrepreneur. And so I was a, food blogger, influencer doing affiliate marketing, and I was like winning because I added value, but then people were crushing me because they were pixel stuffing and stealing data and breaking last clicks and then selling you this and selling you this. And one of the things I haven't talked about publicly ever is one of the reasons why I left that business and walked away and disappeared. And I felt like it was killing me. Like I felt like the only way I was going to succeed because I was so deeply engrossed in that area was like I was going to have to sacrifice my soul because everything was shady. There was nothing above brow. Like everything was a handoff at the sacrifice of something like, oh, don't tell them we did this and boom. And so I had to like leave the internet for like 2.5 years to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens on both sides. And so there's a couple threads that I want to pull. I want to give everybody a preface real quick that, one of the things here is I've had a lot of experience. I've worked with literally hundreds of SaaS companies in this place. I'm friends with a lot of them. I've had some of you guys remember the Alex Sharfin podcast. We talked about the industry, what really happens in the industry and what we've seen. And the software side is no different. It's just as cutthroat, right? It's people spending money, acquiring all these customers on the front to inflate valuations, not really give what's there. And then you have to ask the questions like, how does that company have that many people and support that cost when they only charge that money? And one of the things that I don't think people really understand is what's done with your data on the back end. Like what actually really, really happens. And so there's a lot that happens that I don't think people are aware of. And I know some of it's going to come up today, but I just want to preface that I've talked about this on the podcast before. I've talked about a lot of this, and I choose my loyalties based on how companies work ethically. And one of the reasons I'm such a big proponent for ConvertKit and for drop funnels is because I know both of you. I know Nathan, I know Jordan. I believe in everything. You're wide open. You're open book, ethical. You're like, this is why we do it. This is how we do it. Your teams like support customers like there's no tomorrow. And I'm never guilted of like thinking I'm not one funnel away, right? Like I'm never made wrong or bad or whatever. And you guys actually stand by your promise and you're really open and authentic. And so I know that's going to come up. And so I just wanted to preface everybody here that like, this is just an authentic conversation about what really happens in the market. And so I do want to talk about drop funnels for a minute though, because we made the move, I don't know, like a couple months ago, like 6 months ago. I met Jordan through our dear friend, Mike Dillard. Mike, love you, man. Thanks for getting a call my wife earlier today about crypto. Appreciate you. and I found out about drop funnels. And, here's the thing. I've been on all the platforms. I've been on Kajabi. I've been on ClickFunnels. I've been on SoundCard. I've been on Kartra. I've been on Thrive. I've been on all of them. And all of them, there were things that worked, things that weren't, but they all felt really complicated, misrepresented. And one of the biggest things is that I never really owned any of it. It was like I had this tool, I had this tool, I had this tool, and things weren't matched. And then when you came along, I was like, oh, WordPress. And then my brain was like, oh, everything's been so simple for so long. I was like, but it really wasn't simple because like load speeds and page times and the things that were really happening on the back end were affecting my business. And then you come along, you're like, no, man, it can be better. It can be different. Like, we're not trying to own your data. We're not trying to steal you. No, we can do that. You can make that here. You can do it. And I was so engrossed in the industry that I, for years, thought like I couldn't do that anymore, right? Like, oh, I can't build that.